Hi there, and welcome to another episode of the Future of Jewish podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Hoffman. On this episode, I am joined by Rivka Malka Perlman. She is a transformation coach, national speaker, and mother of 8 who seeks to authentically celebrate the divine with every life experience. As the 8th of 9 children, she grew up in an Orthodox Jewish home and continues to practice Orthodox Judaism today. When Perlman endured a near-death experience during the birth of her youngest child, she felt a new sense of mission. Enjoy my interview with Rivka Malka Perlman. Rivka, it is so great to speak with you. I've really been looking to this episode, quite specifically because, one of the things that is personally important is to get to know what I call the other, right? Like somebody that doesn't look like me, who probably doesn't live a similar life to me, doesn't live in the same place that I live in, doesn't believe or think or operate in the same ways that I do. And so I really am looking forward to this, and I'm sure my audience is as well. But before we get into, where you are today and the things that you're working on, why don't we go back and why don't you tell us about your upbringing? I understood that you're one of 9 children, if I remember correctly, reading your bio, and you also have, I believe, 8 children yourself, if I'm not mistaken. So why don't you tell us exactly? So why don't you tell us about, who you are, where you're from, and ultimately, leading up to where you are today?
Oh my goodness. I'll try to do that super quick. So I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, really, really sheltered, honestly. Like when I think back to my childhood, we were like 5 blocks this way, 5 blocks that way, kosher supermarket, Jewish school. That was my life, nice and safe. I had internally, I was like a bit of do I have to call myself a rebel spirit? I was just something that was getting in a lot of trouble. That was me within that. So I'm grateful when I think back to that safety because, trouble just meant detention, etc. Um, epic moment in my life is when I was 5 and I lit a fire that probably burnt the house down and we had to move out. A lot of my next chapters of my life were really like moving through the shame and guilt and that and just trying to be a good Jew while feeling like a bad person has been a lot of my inner work. And my parents really are really special people. They determine for themselves that they're there for the community, that they're there to be givers, and that's what they've done my whole life. We have, besides for our 9 kids, we have a foster Iranian brother and a foster Russian sister, and my house was always filled with just people who need things, whatever it is, and they were very careful to not be snobby about it. I don't know how to say, like, it wasn't interesting to them to be famous or to be wealthy or to be like super important. So, like if somebody's like getting divorced and their husband's in jail, that person would spend like 2 years at our house for Shabbat all the time with her little kid because that's what she needed. And so whatever people needed, that's what my house was an address for. So that was a really special upbringing. And what else can I tell you? And then I got married really young. This was interesting and kind of like a wild card, but I met my husband when I was 13. He was 19. He was married to my brother's, who passed away, but he was my sister-in-law's brother. He was not married. He was my sister-in-law's brother, and I just had a crush on him. He thought I was a lot older than I was because I had all these older sisters. He figured I'm one of them, and I'm just, you know, anyway, so that was interesting to kind of know about him and have him in the periphery. We didn't get married until later. I did some early admissions and got kind of started on life, went to Gateshead University in England and got married really young, moved right to Israel. And I really wanted this rabbinic life. I wanted it. Like that to me was the glory. I had seen all this communal service at home and I was like, I just want to be like, I would drive old ladies places and cook meals for people and like be the rabbinic life. And then came this interesting like moment where my husband, he had this turnaround and he's like, I don't want to be a rabbi. It was really interesting. He's like, all I've been trained for is community service and to be a rabbi. And I don't want either of those. I got to find myself. I have to do an authentic journey. I can't just plod along like this is who I'm meant to be. it was like, whoa. So then everything kind of turned around. Up until that point, we had been living in Israel. We lived in Israel for about 4.5 years. We moved to America, and it was time for us to find ourselves. And it was not so easy. It really took a while. I was still with my rabbinic dreams. He was just like starting to learn who he was as an entrepreneur or as a business person. And he's like, I just want to be here with the people for the people. So he was having his transitions. I was having my transitions. Eventually, we had many, many beautiful children together. We love that part. The finding our like place happened more organically. People, and then a couple of stops later, just to catch you up, let's say in the last 15 years, we've been married, thank God, 27 years. So last 15 years, notable events were that when I had my last child, I had a near-death experience, and that was very life-changing. Maybe we'll talk about that. And then a couple of years later, I became the director of a Jewish outreach organization. And a couple of years later, we started a headscarf business, which we sold after a year. And then a couple of years later, we started a healing company, which we have now. And I run it with my husband, but I train women in coaching and transformation. And I'm all about the self-development, coming to love yourself, finding yourself. It's been a big story. You can hear like little themes because you're a journalist. You know, the story of the little girl who thought she was horrible and had this hidden shame and made trouble. And like the question of who am I? I thought I was going to be a rabbi's wife, and all the questions along the way, trying to make a living and figuring out what that is when you've had only like a spiritual lens your whole life, finding out you're actually an entrepreneur, neat things like that. And we're very, very grateful.
That's
More
amazing.
grandparents.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Mazal tov.
Thank God.
Lot to unpack there. I want to go back to the fire. So just to be clear, that actually happened. That wasn't a metaphor, right?
Yes. The reason why I say we think it happened is because it was very traumatic for me. I lit this in my memory. I lit this fire on a beautiful little lantern. Actually asked my brother to light it for me. I blew it out. I lit it myself. Next thing I know, the basement is on flames. The fire alarms are ringing. My cleaning help in the house at the time, she put me in my mother's big black boots and sent me out into the snow. I was 5 years old. I panicked because I knew what I had done. So I went to the neighbor's garage and I passed out. And when I came to, I was just alone. And my parents, they were both home. They had been resting. They were across the street. It was so scary. I just walked myself across the street by myself. And they were there, people of real faith. They're like true blue. They were drinking a l'chaim, just saying, thank you, God, we're alive. Whatever happens to the house, we're healthy, we're alive. And then the fire trucks came. And the reason why I say, oh, I think I did it is because years later, so I had this secret shame for many years. And then one day at a Shabbat table, I suddenly burst out with it. I said, I did this thing. I burnt our house down. That was me. We literally had to move out. Like everything was destroyed. It was before Passover. We were getting like clothing. Our clothing were in shreds from other people. And they were like, that's a little uncomfortable to hear because the firemen called it an electrical fire. So it was hard for them to absorb my confession because they didn't want to suddenly be dishonest. So I had to sort it out by myself. So yeah.
What did you learn throughout that process? I mean, I imagine you were still very young. So how does a 5-year-old going into preteen and teen years deal with the trauma, as you called it?
I think it was hard for me to honestly connect with people. It's like between me and you is my secret. And that meant the good part about that, Josh, is that I had a very rich inner world. I mean, I read books like crazy, and I had diaries, and I had adventures, and I made mischief, and I was creative, because there was a part of me that was just watching people, that was never in it with them. So that's kind of how that played out.
Do you remember, was there like a certain point in time where you finally said, I'm at peace with this, or did it just kind of fade away? Like, how did you sort of come to terms with that whole thing and try to move on with your life?
Well, I have this idea I will share it with you. It's a healing idea that I like to teach. In psychology, there's something called memory reconsolidation. That means that every time you go back to remember something, you've evolved more. So the way that you remember it changes, and that becomes your new memory, right? So as I deepened my spiritual pursuits over the last decade, which I really have been like working on deepening an authentic relationship with God, then the narrative has changed. It's no longer I was a little girl who lit the house on fire. It's, get this, Rivka Malka. God made you someone who can light things on fire. He showed that to you from the beginning. Like there's a narrative in there that's really powerful. And not only that, but God wanted me to have an experience of of feeling shame. So I would know what shame feels like from the inside. And I can help other people with their shame and help them to see their intrinsic goodness. And God wanted me to have like experiences of secrecy. So I would now be in the joy of integrity. Like it feels good to tell the truth. It feels good to tell the truth about myself. So the peace is knowing that like I was never bad. Who's ever bad? It's just that God leads you through a series of experiences to give you particular impacts. And then when you have those impacts, you can now serve the world from that place and serve your family and serve yourself, you know? So that's just one of my stories. And I have a lot, but you know, you understand what I'm saying? The narrative is so different once you bring God into the picture. It's like there was no badness in there. That shame was an illusion.
Interesting. I want to ask you, you said authentic relationship with God, and I'm wondering, what does that look like for you? What do you say to people who are not sure if there is a God or what the relationship is with God? How do you how have you built that authentic relationship, and what can you share that might help other people in their relationship building with God or another sort of spirit or being that is sort of a higher power?
Absolutely. Yeah. Um, Thanks for the question. I really feel like we're all God connected. You don't have to call it God. What's God? It's words. Whatever it is. We all have a piece of the divine in us. So for me, it's the question of how could I connect with the piece of divine in me, the piece that's more than, um, and and a piece of the universe or the universe that can take care of me. So, oh gosh, it's such a big question, Josh. I'm going to try to answer like if I don't want to be a monologuer. I'm going to try to put this short. So here we go. My particular struggle was that I saw myself as a bad girl, which for many people translates as a bad person. I'm a bad person, or I'm not enough, or I'm too lazy, or I don't make enough money, or I'm too something, right? Or I'm not enough something. So mine was I'm a bad girl. So then the God that we get to know is always a projection of what we think about ourselves. If I think I'm doing amazing things in this world, then I think that God is supporting me and happy with me. If I feel lousy about myself, then I'm pretty sure I'm feeling kind of distant. So really, the first work was to kind of look at that part of myself that really bad about myself, and anyway, begin a dialogue with God. And I got jealous of people who I would see in Israel doing hisbodedus, which is personal, intimate prayer with God. I would watch them in their videos, Rabbi Lazer Brody, and I would watch him like walk on the shores of the Kinneret and just like say there's so much to thank God about. And meanwhile, I'm just trying to like get by because I don't even know if I did enough good things today. Like my religion was religion. It wasn't a relationship with God. It wasn't authentically spiritual. It was like, do this or you're not good. And that's just garbage. It's literally like kindergarten. And it's like you have to graduate from kindergarten. So kindergarten says, do good, you're getting a point, do bad, you're in the corner. And I had spent plenty of time in the corner. So I had to rewire the brain. And when I wanted to do this, God helped me. Anything you want to do spiritually, you have 100% guarantee for help. And practically what that looked like was that I began a dialogue with God. And it went like this. The only thing I did was that I took a walk. It was 2 blocks down one block across, 2 blocks back to my house, a square, and then back to my house. And I would make myself walk, and I would say, okay, God, we're going to have a talk now. I don't know what to talk to you about. Your trees are really nice. Thanks for making my feet move. I'm having a great day. And then my mind would wander, and I would come back and I'd say, you didn't have to make trees. I guess you made them because you wanted us to see something beautiful. There could be oxygen tanks all around, or there could be nothing all around. Really, really thanks for the trees. And then I'd go on, and then it was so stilted because I was building a relationship where before I had this thing called a religion. You know, in the Torah, it doesn't say the word religion. The only one that says the word religion, the only place where it says it is Haman. In the book of Esther, he said there's this people with their religion. Religion is a trap of like, religion is not good. It's not relationship. When we have a Torah, it's a system of relationship with God. So it's good to keep the Torah. It will give you a wholesome life, and it is the true and correct path. But foundational is, who is God to you? And if you think that his love is conditional, you're going to be a mess. So practically speaking, for your audience, begin a dialogue. And I will just share with you that it gets better, because it's almost like you start to learn that Hashem, God, is waiting for you, and it's you who's got to get comfortable. It's like, as if, I always think of it, it's as if you're a belligerent teenager with a really great mom. She loves you, but you're mad at her. You're like, get me to my friend's house, get me there. You're ordering her around. You think she's the most annoying thing, but she's just loving you. So it's you who's got to grow up. So that's the growing up. And at first it started with these walks, and then it morphed. I started to be able to have this dialogue in the car. It's a really special place. Nobody has privacy these days, but you still got your car. And the reason why I say specifically dialogue is because if you're dialoguing, it means you're acknowledging someone's there. Like you were saying, I think we got to just dialogue with each other. That means God's there. So I was forcing myself. And then I moved it from the car to the outdoors, because in nature, actually the vibration of nature is the perfect vibration. If you're inside, you're like knocking into all kinds of static and other people's vibrations. And literally when you're with nature, you're at one with everything. Your spirit can calm down, and the grass itself sings a song to God. You don't even have to do much. So I found this garden, and I'm urban over here, but there was a garden, and I would walk into this garden. I actually hired a coach, most expensive coach of my life, but I guess the most worth it, because he was one of these. I said, I'm such a kind of a soft person. I want alpha male in my life. I need it. So I hired this alpha male, and I was like, get me in shape. And he said, okay, what 3 things are you committed to? And one of them was, I will go to the garden every single day. I will go there. And sometimes I would get there just before nightfall when it closed, but I was like, Ron, I'm here. And the more I stuck with it, the more it became a sanctuary for me. And that was the beginning for me. And I had to learn that God is unconditional, and I'm the one who's in a conditionally loving relationship with myself. But he's not going anywhere, and he can be anything that I need him to be at all times.
Wow, that's really beautiful, and so much to think about, I think, for myself and for the listener. You made some interesting statements there about religion, which, we're so caught up in Judaism being a religion. It's something that I've only recently learned that, as Avraham Infeld said, former president of Hillel International, the Jews have a religion, but Judaism is not a religion. And so it's something that I think, you as somebody who, from the outside looking in, people look at you and say, well, she's Orthodox, ultra Orthodox, she's super religious, she lives for God, she's all with God. And then you make a statement like that. I think it's a really powerful statement that you made, and I'm glad you made it, because I think it's an important one. I want to ask you on the subject of developing an authentic relationship with God. You did mention in your opening remarks that you went through a life-threatening situation. I think it was with the birth of your last child. Can you talk to us, to the extent that you're comfortable with talking to us, of course, about that experience, and also how you mitigated your authentic relationship with God throughout it?
Sure. Thanks for asking. Yeah, and I would love to just touch on one more thing, because I did make a big statement, and I like to use my mouth like sweetly. So to call something garbage is pretty intense for me. You know, it's not like a bad word, but it's like that's a lot of negativity. But have you ever seen The Truman Show?
Of course,
Of
legendary.
course, right? So
Yeah.
this is how I think of it, just to clarify what I'm saying. You know, in The Truman Show, he's married, but she doesn't love him because it's a show. So it doesn't even matter if they sleep in the same bedroom. It doesn't even matter if they stood under the canopy together, because it's an act, it's a show. And when and like, what's the difference between that and the woman who actually loves him? You know, only that it's real. There's real love there. So when I say religion is garbage, I mean, if you look at Judaism as a system of do's and don'ts, you're basically in the Truman Show. You're just, there's no love in it. You feel trapped. You got to get out of there. Your human spirit can't fly, and it's not authentic. What's the difference between authentic family and inauthentic family is love. So the discovery that I had when I had that near-death experience and walked into an authentic relationship with God was love. Love is what makes it real. Otherwise, otherwise it's horrible. It's just and the human spirit doesn't even want to be told what to do. That's the thing. We are big, we want to fly free. So once you understand, oh, it's a system of love, then then the coffee that you know the woman who loves her husband brings to him is beautiful. It's love. It's not Truman's wife bringing the coffee. So for example, when I cover my hair, which feels amazing, in case any of the audience is curious, it's very, it holds your energy in a beautiful way. It's incredible. I have some students who are not Jewish who just wrap because it feels good. It's like a yogi practice also. It's very spiritually containing. Anyway, I get to know that, like, one who loves me, who created my physical being, like nobody's going to argue that, like, I was not created in a cabbage patch. The one who made this thing has a lot of instructions about the care and well-being of this thing, or like I dress modestly. The one who loves me knows that if I show too much skin, I won't really be seen. I'll be like, I'll be noticed, but maybe not for the right reasons. So just the one who loves me is like directing me. And if I go off the direction, if I get misaligned, then it's not like heaven or hell kind of thing. It's like, oh, you're actually misaligned with your best life. Like, you're going to need Shabbos, for example, to come back into alignment. I did that for you. I know what you need. Like when your computer automatically restarts. Yeah, because it needs to restart sometimes. I know you need a restart. So it's like, do that, hun. And that then it works. So that's me and religion. Just wanted to say that. And I'm always looking for, like, how is this a loving gift for me? I had I'll tell you a quick story. I had a neighbor whose family was thinking of converting to Judaism. And at the end, they didn't. So they kind of had they had a lot of family dynamics, and then they moved away. And the young girl who had spent a lot of time by my house when she was 10 years old, I loved her like crazy. Her name was Kayla. She got back in touch with me when she heard that I was coaching. And we talked a little bit, and I said, Kayla, what stuck with you from those years? Because she literally lived dead central Orthodox Judaism. And now she's totally not. She said, what stuck with me was the concept of Lashon Hara. Lashon Hara is gossip, and it's one of the most important commandments that there are, to not speak negatively about another person. She said, it's incredible. I took that from the Jewish community that I was in, and she said, now I'm in college, and because I refuse to speak Lashon Hara, I will not gossip about people. My quality of friends is completely different. And people know, don't come to Kayla with gossip. She's not trash talking anybody. And she's like, I'm dating this guy, and he's a high quality guy, just from that one commandment. And I was kind of blown away, because it's something that I take for granted, that not that nobody gossips, but at least we're working on it. So yeah.
I think that's interesting. That's actually something that I came up with recently, and becoming more acquainted with my Judaism is, gossiping. It's all too common, unfortunately, and it's sort of a habit, and it's sort of this superficial feel good in the moment, but no real long-term benefits, not for you and not for the person you're talking about. I
Yeah.
think that's such a beautiful aspect of Judaism. I want to redirect you back
Go
to
ahead.
the life-changing experience
Yes,
that you
I'm
had that
sorry.
is
Yes.
ultimately, no, it's all good. You're telling us some really fascinating things, but I also would love, because from my understanding, your coaching business now and the work you're doing now in the community and so forth is really a direct result of this sort of near-death experience that you had.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
can you just give us a little bit of background there and then kind of
Sure.
segue into how that translates to what you're doing today?
Sure. Yes. And thanks for being such a good listener. Yeah. Thank you. Let's see. So, dun, 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 I was 9 months pregnant and then some. And interesting to note that my husband and I have really had a lot of joy raising our family. So much so that we have rituals when I go into labor, like we play, it's fun. It's just fun. It's exciting. We're building something new together and we order Chinese, sometimes jump on the beds, whatever, oh, maybe if we jump on the beds, the baby will get moving. It's just fun. So we ordered our Chinese food because I thought I was going into labor. And it was weird. I'm telling you, it was weird. I ate it and the dread filled my heart. Dread. I felt a premonition. I was like, this tastes like straw. And I had this terrifying moment where I went up to put my children to sleep and I was kissing them. Our bunk bed had broken. So these kids were in mattresses on the floor and I was kissing them goodnight. And I just felt so scared, like I was kissing them goodbye. And I went to the hospital. And at night, things were pretty calm. And then in the morning, when I woke up, labor intensified, and I suddenly had like horrible pain. And I said, "Get the epidural." And we're these like birth junkies, so that was weird for me to say. My husband's like, "Listen to her; she never sounds like this." And just the way that God arranged it, the anesthesiologist, the best one, was just on call just then, 7 a.m. He had walked in, he came in to help me. And while he's asking me these questions about did I eat, did I not eat, and all this, I just pass out. And I made this horrible kind of noise. And what I remember from that time is that everything stopped hurting. And it was very black, like a blackness and a peacefulness. And it was sweet, very sweet. And I looked down at these people helping me. And I remember thinking, like, they're so nice. They're like working on this body. Like people really are beautiful. That's the truth. And I got to see it. Like people are so beautiful. And I got to see all these earnest, good people just hovering around this lady, trying to help her. And I was not in a panic. I was very calm. And then they like wheeled me out on the stretcher into the operating room, and they got that baby out fast. And weirdly, I came back to consciousness for an instant, and they pulled off my scarf. I'm very attached to my headscarf. I feel like it's my crown and like deep identity. And I actually came to, but they were like, "Get this thing out of here." They don't like it in an OR room. But anyway, yeah, so there I was, and they didn't know why I had passed out and what was happening, but they got that baby out in 7 minutes. The nurse bundled up the baby, stuck him in my husband's hands and said to him, "Pray, just pray." So he didn't know what was going on. And the first thing he did was he called my mom, who was in Israel, and he said, like, "Please go to the kotel. I need you to daven. I need you to pray." And then he called my father, and my father is an ER doctor, and my father said, "Please ask them what it is. Ask them if it's DIC." So my husband dutifully wrote down the words DIC. And then when the nurses came back in, he said, "Is it DIC?" And they said, "Yes." And in the doctor's vernacular, this isn't what it really stands for, but DIC, they like to say, stands for death is coming. Yeah, it's a nasty one. So what it really was AFE, which is an amniotic fluid embolism, where the amniotic fluid sac ruptured. So the baby's like in all this fluid, but it's toxic fluid for the rest of the body. There's all kinds of stuff in there, and that fluid was all over my body. So my body became toxic, and because it was in shock, then came the DIC, which I really should learn what it means. The C is for coagulation. What it basically means is that the platelets die. So there's no way for a person to stop bleeding because they cannot have any blood clots. So I started to get these blood transfusions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 blood transfusions. They just kept on trying to pump blood into me because I couldn't stop bleeding. And then they started with the platelet transfusions, and they got 5 of those. And then they had to do a hysterectomy, and then everything got quiet. And they told my husband that it's a miracle that I survived, but he should know that like 80% of people don't survive, but of the 20% that do, 50% are in a vegetative state. I'd been without oxygen because I was filled with toxins, and they did not know how I was going to wake up. I was in the ICU, and all the family came in, and they were not really expecting much. And then I woke up. It was kind of amazing. I woke up, my husband was by my side, and he told me a little bit about what happened, but he didn't want to shock me too much. And then I was just like hot tears streaming down my face, and I couldn't move, and I couldn't talk. I had tubes all over, and like I should learn these terms, but that tube that helps you breathe, I was intubated. Thank you. So I couldn't talk. And usually you're sedated when you're intubated because it's terribly uncomfortable. It feels like you're choking on spaghetti because there's something literally going down your throat. So what I didn't know at the time is there was some other emergency going on in the ICU. So all doctors and nurses were there. So all I was left with was, I'm choking, I'm choking, I'm choking, I'm choking. And it was so poignant to me later on. And even then, when I was like trying to sort this through, I feel like I'm choking, but that's actually a sign that I'm living. Like that's just so life, like when you're down, you're living life, you're doing it. So I was doing life right there, but I was crying and scared and alone because they had to shoo everyone away. And so what happened to me was that I had this dialogue with God. And remember, I had not been in dialogue with God before this. I was in dialogue with myself, just trying to earn points. I want to earn points because that was my thing. So this was the dialogue as if it was out loud. I said, God, why'd you save my life? And I hear, because I love you. And then I say, why do you love me? And I go through this catalog of my life, like a Rolodex, like, and I can't find like anything that I did that was like so fantastic or without ego or not trying to earn points or anything. I can't find a single thing. And I say, why? Because I love you. Just need you to get that. So I'm like, my parents come maybe later that night, and I'm kind of in a daze, and I'm like, because you love me. Okay, I got it. It's like a new language for me. Like, what does that mean? And I start saying my morning blessings like I always did. And instead of like them being the morning blessings of our prayer book, I start thinking like, oh, you did that because you love me. And then I start seeing people, and I had been so insecure. I was always very confident with like a lot of action around me, but in my heart was this like, do they like me? Do I sound good? How are they judging me? Like really, I call it the plague of self-doubt. I was plagued. And it was the beginning of the cure, because suddenly I realized that like, if God loves me, then God loves you. It's the same. Like neither of us have to be superstars of the planet to be considered holy and precious. Like we just are loved. So like I can't say I got cured right away because I had some psychological unwiring to do, but I started to see souls instead of people. Like everyone is so beautiful. And that was the beginning of the turnaround for me. And then what really ended up happening is that I had to, the next part of the journey, what led into coaching, is that there was a limit. There's always limits to inspiration. So we say we want to go from inspiration to transformation. So it didn't really actually matter at some point how much God loved me. I had to learn to love myself and to come to terms and to grips with my strengths and weaknesses and my dark sides, my angry sides, my jealous sides, my competitive sides, my my scared sides, and also my loving sides, and the goodness of my heart, and and the truth of me. So coming to that kind of helped me to marry the two. And now I like to say that self-love and God's love are two sides of one coin. So we're always deepening both.
Wow, such a beautiful, really heartwarming story. Um, just want to give the audience a few seconds here to really digest, that the power of your story. I want to ask you a few questions about what it's like to be a woman in the Orthodox Jewish world. There seems to be a lot of perceptions and misconceptions and what they call fake news, I guess, today. Um, why don't we just start by asking you, what's it like to be a woman in the 2022 Orthodox Jewish world?
It's epic. It's totally epic. It's so beautiful. I love it. Um, I mean, I don't want to like talk too big, so just ask me a question and I'll be so happy to answer it.
So I'm curious to know about, there's in sort of American and Western media, right? We see things like Shtisel and Unorthodox, and I think it's called My Unorthodox Life.
Yes.
And obviously those show a very vanity-filled uh, perspective of what it's like to be a woman in the religious Orthodox Jewish world. I'm not sure if you've seen any of those shows. I actually haven't seen. I saw Unorthodox, but I didn't see the other two. I'm just curious, like, obviously what they're showing in those shows. I mean, you don't have to be a genius to understand that it's a very non-realistic view
Yeah.
of your world. But
Yeah.
what are some of the feelings and thoughts that go through you
Yeah.
when you're confronted with the reality or the lack of reality that sort of the Western media portrays about people like yourself?
Yeah. Well, you're hitting me at a beautiful point, because up until now, I really was in my inner world of healing, and I wasn't able to step forward as a voice as much as I would naturally want to. I just had to do my own work, but I really hope that I have opportunities, and you're giving me an opportunity right here to speak. I feel like it's my time. Um, when I was a young child growing up Orthodox, I really was upset at being a woman. I really was. I'll be honest. I felt like the action is on the men's side, and I do not like that. I like action. And the dancing is on the men's side, and I like to dance. So this really bothered me. And um, that's good. Like I said, when we do like memory reconciliation, you start to realize, yeah, if that bothered me, that means that God put it inside of this person that it should bother her. So she should find some answers. So instead of seeing that as like, that was awful, I'm like, okay, good, because I get to find answers. So actually, what I learned, and what the way that I live, and the way, like, there's not, I'm not singular in this. There's like, this is a movement. This is big. Is that Kabbalistically, we're going to go to Kabbalah for a moment, even though that's not where I draw from. It's just where I get validated from. But Kabbalistically, um, all of the curses of Adam and Eve are being fixed. There is a tikkun on them. So one of the tikkunim, one of the curses that that Eve was given, is v'hu yimshol bach, and he shall rule over you. Right? That's a curse in a big way. Basically, it means that for most of the most of humanity, it was a male-centric world. And why every curse, every consequence actually has a fixing in it. For example, when I had a daughter with a lot of moodiness, I mean, a lot, she'd get whatever, she got sent to her room a lot, but I bought her an art box, and I knew, and I showed her how to play spa music. And I knew that when I'm sending her to her room, what have I got to punish a kid for? No, I just trying to like get her back to normal. So she'd go there and do her art and listen to spa music. So deep in the male-centric world was some really good things, like men became protectors, providers, lands were conquered, eventually democracy, all kinds of things. Beautiful things happened, yay, but we don't need it anymore. It's over. The age of the woman has begun. And it started with feminism, which ended up being a corrupt form. It ended up getting corrupted because people didn't understand what women were. So they were like, women need rights, so women need to be like men. Now we're deepening and we're saying women need to be like women. Ooh, that's even sweeter. So we can partner beautifully with men. There should be no hierarchy. There should be partnership. So Kabbalistically, every 1,000 years represents one of the days of creation. We're in the end of the 5,000 years. And we are, if this is Chinese to you listeners, just don't worry. Basically, what I'm trying to say, we're in the age of the women, where the curses of women and men are both being undone. And another curse that was given to women was the elishech teshukasech, that towards your husband shall be your longing and your yearning. And this was also beautiful. It kept relationship alive until the men could find their femininity, where they genuinely needed a woman and realized that they need women. Women were kind of like needy. Well, guess what? Now women need men and men need women, and men are in touch with their feminine side and women are in touch with their masculine side. And it's awesome. So Kabbalah speaks about this. If any of your scholarly people want to look up a book, they can look up a book called Kabbalistic Writings on the Masculine and Feminine. It's really deep and intense, but basically what I described to you about God is also the rise of the feminine. We're going from having to see God on top, who meets out reward and punishment, to the inner dimension of God, which is the feminine nurturing dimension, the unconditionally loving mother dimension. And that is creating a massive opening everywhere. So this is where I'm going to take you down layers. So that's in the abstraction, is like, this is an awesome time to be a woman. This is a time of great empowerment. And then what I found out about like this segregation between men and women is that the more I honor myself and how I relate to God, and as a woman, the more I appreciate those segregated times, because my worshiping of God, the way that I want to pray, is not, I don't want to do it with men. I don't want like sexuality to be in there at all. You know what I'm saying? When somebody has a high sexual vibration, that also speaks to a high spiritual connection vibration. It's all the same thing. It's all intimacy. It's all connection. So you want to be on the woman's side, doing your own thing, your own connected way. You honestly don't want that disturbed. If you're in kind of a mentality of feminism and it's not fair and I'm losing out and you don't really get what it means to be a woman, or maybe you haven't been given that opportunity to express that, the strength and the softness and the empowerment, then it can feel really lousy. And I totally get that. And I was there. I just love where I am now. I serve women. We have a great time together. My marriage has never been better. What I used to have a very old-fashioned view of marriage. I did not understand team. I didn't, just like I didn't understand like God, I didn't understand team. I thought my job is to be a good wife. And my husband treated me like a queen, but I just didn't get it until I finally got like, we're a team, for heaven's sake. Like he gets to be soft sometimes. He's a softie and he gets to be strong sometimes, and same with me. And yeah, so it's pretty awesome and I love it. And my husband and I, one of the things that is important to us is that, we sit at the Shabbat table every week. That's very, very core part of our life. So we sit on the side together. It's not like there's like a very classic man sits at the head of the table and the woman sits around with the kids. No, we both sit on the side together, with the king and the queen of the household. And we welcome our friends and guests.
That's beautiful. I want to ask you about your marriage, if you don't mind, and you don't have to go into crazy detail, whatever you feel is comfortable for you. But what do you think that the Orthodox Jewish world gets right about the concept of marriage that maybe we don't get so right in maybe the secular world or in the non-Orthodox world?
Great. There's a lot. There's really a lot. There's really a lot.
What's like the one thing that you would say, if more secular people, so to speak, did this in their marriage, they would probably fare better that we do in the Orthodox world? Like, what's that one thing that's like, that could be a difference maker?
Top has got to be mikvah. Top has got to be mikvah. I mean, that's the top. Think about it like this. You're two people and you want to stay committed to each other for life, right? So what's the glue? All day long you have love, and then you come back and you have the glue, the intimacy, and then you have loving connections, team building experiments, right? But then there's moments of intimacy. Well, part of intimacy is discovery and newness. So what Judaism has built into it is a cycle where, as long as a woman is menstruating, 2 weeks out of the month, she is not together with her husband. 2 weeks out of the month, she is together with her husband. That means you are literally forbidden fruit. How awesome is that? Now, there's all kinds of psychological benefits, and people who are like super into the menstrual cycle will tell you about how a woman needs her time. And in Native American cultures, like when a woman had her period, she would go off and the elders would come and talk to her. She's in her inner space. Then in her next week, she's in her like peak creative space or something. And then she has her 2 weeks of like Zen awesomeness, right? So the Torah always lines up with science very beautifully. But just on an interpersonal level, fidelity, you don't get bored. Your bedroom life is interesting. It's new. And not only that, a woman's body is honored. She doesn't have to, like, a lot of the reason why women's are like, I have a headache. And then the guy's like, well, I gotta figure this, I gotta get excitement somehow. And, is because there's no newness, not enough choice. So many, it just gets old. What should I tell you? It gets old and it gets complicated, and you try to jazz it up with all kinds of ways. And don't worry, Torah's got you covered, because if you just, it says take 2 weeks off. And the beautiful thing about the 2 weeks off is it's 2 weeks on in communication. You can't solve things with a hug. You don't touch each other. I know it sounds bizarre if you're not used to this. You don't touch each other. You're not hugging. You're not kissing. You're just communicating. You're becoming friends again. You're becoming friends. And then towards that second week, you're building up chemistry. And there's a lot of chemistry. And it doesn't like stop. It's really chemistry. And then it's awesome. And the mikveh experience is so honorable for a woman. The mikvahs are beautiful. You can look. I actually tried, Josh. To get to make a YouTube video about a mikveh tour. But the problem is that it's such like an electric place that they just didn't want it on video. It's so private. It's like a spa. It's gorgeous. The women, it's an honor to a woman's body, psyche, and soul. So if anybody, I mean, I think there's like mikveh.org. You can get a private person to lead you through even a drop of this, to like, you don't have to do anything in Judaism 100% all the time, all the way. But if any of it is, you're like, yeah, I would like my husband to be a little more interested in me, just know that the woman drives the ship. She's the engine. You can do what you were going to do. God had you in mind. And, look up a little bit about mikveh, or be in touch with me, or whatever.
I love that because, you're so right. There's so many issues between people in a relationship, sexual or intimate or whatever you want to call it. And it seems like what you're describing has really been around for, I don't know, the last 4,000 years. And it's like, in an age where there's always something new, and there's a new app, and there's a new device, and there's a new, mentality, and there's a new this, and there's a new that, you're basically talking about something that's age old, but something that continues to have, sounds like a profound effect on your life and your marriage and your relationship and your family. So I really appreciate you sharing that. I want to go a little bit into your coaching business. I know you, from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I know you primarily work with women. But understanding that probably men and women are listening to this podcast episode, you deal a lot with healing. And we know that the world right now is very sick, no pun intended. We have a war in Europe, we have the pandemic, we have inflation, we have Israel and the Palestinians, we have all different types of things going on all over the world. And I think right now, a lot of people are struggling with their personal healing, because when they look outside, so to speak, they don't see a pretty picture. What are some of the things that you talk about nowadays with your students and with the community that you serve in terms of personal healing?
Great question. So could you just help me clarify where you're going with this? So you're saying the world is really, really chaotic right now. And I focus on personal healing. And the question is,
The question is now specifically with everything that's going on,
okay,
and also interpersonal things, right? I mean, we know that at least it seems that, for example, divorce rates are not going in the right direction. We can say that much. And social media has had tremendous negative effects on relationships and friendships and things of that nature. And it's had negative effects on mental health. So as somebody's trying to navigate their own personal healing in a very chaotic and messy world,
yeah,
what are some of like the main themes that you hit on recently to help
yeah,
those people with their personal healing?
yeah, incredible, incredible, great. Um, so first of all, I would just wanted to say to our audience, if I could, so the coaching school that I run does only train women, but I do have an advanced healing course that you can take by yourself online. I'm going to be putting it up this month, God willing. And if the feminine, if this type of soft conversation feels like it can be helpful for you, then you might like the advanced healing course where you'll go into lots of, it's really building a relationship with yourself and with God. There's a couple of dimensions and it's really good. So just would like to let the audience know that. Look for it in, what are we in? I guess we're in May, June. Look
End
for
of
it in,
April, yeah.
yeah, June on rivkamalka.com.
Amazing.
Yeah. So here's how it is. Imagine that the world is all connected, because it is. You can see this through the internet, and we're all in one big vibrational field. We are all affecting everything. So you see, let's say something that's happening in the Ukraine, and your heart not only hurts, but you literally, I mean, I once heard a rabbi say, and this was in the 80s, we all have PTSD. Like nothing's normal. And this was then, and he's like, the advent of therapy is because as a, society, we have PTSD. Things are moving faster than our brains can catch up with. There's no sense of safety or stability. And again, that was in the 80s, and now we're now. Change, 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 change. So what can you do is you can create and contribute to the field that's right here. That's what's within your control. Now, for some of us, once we do that, there's going to be some world matters that we can contribute to as well, but it's going to have to come from the quiet place on the inside. It can't come from the frenetic, desperate, fearful place. Okay. So let's see if we can give our audience a tool. I'll give you one of my favorite tools, and maybe that will be a fun thing for you. Okay. Oh, so many favorite tools. Okay, this is a favorite because it's very, okay. It's called PIES. PIES stands for physical, intellectual, emotional, spiritual. So you're walking along your day, you're doing fine, and suddenly you're not. Suddenly you get mad, suddenly you're triggered, suddenly you get emotional, suddenly you're whatever, suddenly something's happening. There's a trigger. What do? How do you come back to a state of equilibrium? So the first thing, just even before the PIES, is the awareness. Breathe, breathe, just breathe, and notice that you're no longer okay. You were at ease, now you're in dis-ease. Just notice it. Once you notice you're in dis-ease, you've got your opportunity to eat a piece of pie. And here it comes. It's a mental exercise, and you can do this on paper. I love to use my phone to sort out my feelings. And I say, P, the physical facts. What's actually happening? What's actually happening here is, this is the example I like to give. My husband came downstairs and didn't say good morning. He always does, but right? He didn't say good morning. Physical facts. My husband came down the steps. It was quiet. Facts are things that you can observe with your five senses. I said good morning. I was met with silence. Okay. These are the facts. So then we go down to the I, the intellectual or the interpretation. And we start to relax with a sense of humor and realize that human beings are made to be meaning-making machines. And therefore, we're going to make some meaning out of that. And so we have a very good time. This is a very humbling experience. I like to add humor to it and use the words, the story that I told myself, or the story I'm telling myself. And it's like, okay, the story that I'm telling myself is he doesn't love me. The story that I'm telling myself is that I do everything around here. The story that I'm telling myself is our relationship is going down the tubes. The story that I'm telling myself is that he's a buffoon. The story that I'm telling myself is that I'm too sensitive. And you start to like take notes of all the crazy things the mind does. It's fear-based, it's attachment-based, whatever. You can go deep into like the tunnels of psychology, but this is just managing day to day. I take accountability that I'm right now in a big story. My story is making me feel all kinds of things. Next thing I know, I don't want to serve him breakfast. Why? Because I'm in my story, right? And all he did was walk down the steps, right? That's what happens. So I take note of my story. Then I take note of my emotions, PIES. And we like to use only the raw emotions: mad, sad, glad, hurt, afraid, ashamed. Everything else are compounded emotions, like disappointment means there's a story in there. Okay. So then I get to say to myself, I am feeling mad, sad, also glad that I like him, also hurt, also ashamed because I'm in this story again. Like, shoot, I'm back here. Fine, I'm human. Then I go to the S in pies, and the S stands for my spiritual longing. And this is the deep work. So, okay, I admitted my humanity. Now, what is it that I really want? And the friend who taught this to me, I can always see her eyes in front of me, her big eyes. And she's like, what do you really want? What do you really want? And I'll be like, I really want like the romance of a lifetime. I really want to feel loved. That's what I really want. And then you kind of calm down, because that's what's really going on, is that there's something that's so important to you. That's all. That's why you're getting riled up. It touched a deep nerve in there. So at the end of all that, you have two choices. One is you can turn the pain into a prayer. You can just, if you're spiritually oriented, it's a really sweet thing to do. Give it up to God and just say, God, I got real sensitive this morning, but what I really want is the romance of a lifetime. Can you please keep guiding me that way? Like, I don't have to know exactly how to do it. I'm Miss Sensitive. I made a thing up about the good morning. Could you do it, please? And just like turn the pain into a prayer. That's one way. And then another thing that you can do is you can add a little R onto the end of pies, which is to make a request. So in a relationship, you always have the opportunity. You can make a request of the other, or you can make a request of yourself. So guess what I could do? I could walk up to him and I could say, hon, I need a good morning right now. Like, could you just say good morning? And he'd be like, sure, good morning. Over, because I made a request, but I first had to sort out my trigger. Otherwise, I'll be like steaming away from him. Or I could make a request for myself. I'm going to request for myself that I make a date with him tonight, because obviously I'm feeling a little sensitive. I'm going to request for myself that I like take my time over a cup of coffee because I'm being a nutcase this morning. So that's my tool. It's called Pies. You can add the R, and it's how to just bring yourself moments of healing and not like smash all the people in your life at the same time.
I love that. I'm personally going to use that, so I appreciate that, and I'm sure a lot of people that are listening also can derive a lot of value from that tool. I want to ask you one final question, Rivka. I'm curious, in your mind, coming from the Orthodox Jewish world, what's like one or two, maybe three things that you would love to see happen between the relationship that exists today, or even lack thereof, between the Orthodox and the non-Orthodox Jewish worlds? What would you like to see happen in that dynamic and those relationships on a macro level, on a micro level, in the way that you see it?
Great question. I wish that as in Orthodox, like that if Orthodox people allowed themselves to, I want to use the word confidence. There's a certain like clarity and surety that I feel that I was blessed with through my parents and through my experiences. And I feel like from a place of self-confidence, then it's easy to connect to people. You're not defensive, So if we can all get off the defensive a little bit, I was thinking Orthodox Jews, but really everyone, if we can get off the defensive, we've got nothing to prove. We really do need each other. Then we can talk to each other like friends. And, no one's got to like rope anyone into any one ideology. God knows just find how to open up each person's soul and call them close in their way. For one person, it might be through a world mission project. Another person, it might be through a particular mitzvah. Like, he can do that, but can we just be friends and get along? And for me, that means talking to people. Like, I was just going for a root canal, and there was a guy sitting next to me, a Russian man, and it's just to talk to him was so beautiful. And I asked him, "What are you doing for Seder?" And he said, "I don't do Seder. That's just not one of the things I do. I'm secular, but I feel like a Jew's a Jew's a Jew. Like, you may not do Seder, but Seder's doing you. You may not do Passover, but like, sorry, it's like written all over you. So I just asked him, and for me, it felt like a beautiful question. Like, how can I support you? Like, I know that a Jew's a Jew. I know that there's Passover in him. It doesn't have to look like my Passover, but if I'm Orthodox, I could still help him. I said, what can I do for you? Is there anything? Can I support you in any way? Would you like some matzah? And I ended up he's like, yeah, okay. So I made a phone call, connected him to the Chabad in Harrisburg. So why can't he have matzah? Of course he can. Let's meet each other where we're at. So that's one thing. And then I have a fantasy. It's a fantasy, and maybe if I say it out loud, it will come true. But I'm sure you're familiar with Kululam,
Of course.
right? So what they create is an experience of transcendence. They really do. In the unity is transcendence. So I just want to see more of that. I think what they're doing is incredible, and I wish to do that with transcendent messages of God's love. If everyone could open up just to a little bit more of their own okayness, like their own beauty. You're so beautiful. You're so loved. Like, you can relax. Like, Hashem is holding your hand. He just relax. Then that's my dream, is to have more mass gatherings where we're just friends. And like, there's so much blessing in that. It says that shalom, our verses say that shalom, peace, creates a vessel for blessing. So let's just enjoy each other. We don't have to figure out all the differences. And the final thing is that I learned the power of one mitzvah, just one mitzvah, that we can each, like from that girl who took on, about Lashon Hara, if you can not try to like peg yourself as religious or not religious, just say, there might be something sweet in here, like something stirs my soul about this, and follow it, trust it. Then a mitzvah is like a vitamin. Sometimes people say, like, how do you know how to eat right? I eat right for my body. My body just knows. I'm meant to be vegan, whatever. We know. We know stuff. If a mitzvah calls you, go ahead and do it. Don't resist it thinking it's only for Orthodox people. Let yourself have that nutrient, and it can be a homecoming for you.
That's a beautiful, really perfect way to end this episode, Rivka. It's been an absolute pleasure to get to know you, to hear your story, to hear your tremendous amount of wisdom. And I just really thank you so much, Toda Rabba, for joining me and sharing with us.
Thank you, Josh. May you have every blessing in all your dreams and your missions. You're doing a great thing for the Jewish people.